This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking Umbrella Academy Season 2, Episode 8, The 7 Stages.
Oh, hi there. I'm Mr. Briefcase. If you're watching this presentation, that means you've made the best decision of the rest of your life. You've decided to join the Commission. Over the next 90 minutes, I'm going to do my best to show you around this old place. You and I are going to have some fun together. Here at the Commission, you'll find a wide array of exciting career opportunities just waiting to be discovered. Which department will be right for you? Analyst, keeping us informed. Operations, keeping us safe. Hi-ya! Infinite switchboard operator, the key to everything we do here. In these rooms, we monitor the entire timeline and report any anomalies we see along the way, keeping the correct timeline at all times. Whatever your skill, education, or comfort level with moral ambiguity, the Commission has an exciting career path in store for you.
Oh, hi there, fellow Academy alumni. It's Chris the podcaster, and you're here on TV Podcast Industries, and we're going to be discussing over the next 60 minutes the Umbrella Academy Season 2, Episode 8, The 7 Stages. Over these period of time, we're going to be doing and deep diving a lot of the actual main points of the episodes, but I'm not alone. You too can be giving us feedback, because you too are part of these Academy alumni. But more importantly, I'm joined by two other podcast hosts. Gentlemen, why don't you tell them what they've won?
Well, I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Brolly Dollies. Yes, I am one of your other hosts, John, and I'm currently at stage 4. Yes, so it is getting a little close in the podcast room.
Always hate editing out flatulence from our podcasts.
Yeah.
It happens way more often than you think it does.
No, I know. Luckily, I usually mute my mic.
Luckily, you're in a different room, Chris.
It's true. Otherwise, you'd all be dead. But gentlemen, we're here to discuss episode 8 of the season 2 of Umbrella Academy. What do you guys think? Quick thoughts.
Really, really like this episode. The discovery of Vanya and the interrogation of Vanya by the FBI, I thought was really, really well done. There's been that threat over the head of Vanya since the beginning of the season, since last time she was pushed over the edge reasonably easy, and she destroyed the planet, and created Doomsday. And we saw in the first episode, she's also heavily involved in what causes Doomsday. So throughout the season, there's always been this threat of what is it that's going to push her over the edge? Yeah, I think LSD, and interrogation from the FBI might be the thing that pushes her over the edge. Really, really good though.
Yeah, really, really like this episode. And yeah, we get an answer. So interesting. Diego manages to infiltrate the infinite switchboard in order to get an answer to the riddle, which only at episode 8, which means we've got 2 more episodes with which how that answer may unravel. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I'm a bit on the fence on this, and I it's more, and I'll get into it in my top points in my discussions. I really enjoyed the episode as a whole. I just did not enjoy some of the character, the story choices. But again, I am following the story that they're putting down. This is their story, that they know where they want to go to. And as again, we always say, we're not writers. We're podcasters. So they have a story they want to tell. Tell me your story. I may critique it, but I know it's going to be good. But I just don't agree with it.
I'll definitely say for myself, by episode 8 of this season, I said it in season 1, season 2 is also way better story-wise than the comic books. They're so much more coherent and so much more character built. So, yeah, certainly enjoying it. I'd probably say, I know we've got 2 episodes left, but I haven't said it so far this season. I think season 2 is a different class from season 1. It's an academy. Oh, yeah. It's an academy after all. Everybody has upped their game. Everybody's got a better storyline. Everybody, acting wise, is bringing it every episode. So yeah, definitely say that about where we are in this part of the season.
Yeah, But speaking of this part of the season, do you want to tell us what they gave us for this episode, Derek?
Absolutely. Yeah, this episode was directed by Amanda Marcellus. She directed an episode of Ozark Season 2 and an episode of Ozark Season 3, and also directed an episode of Westworld Season 3. We binged Ozark in about 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved that show. It's my version of Breaking Bad, as in I liked it and I'll sell it to everybody that I possibly can. Watch Ozark, it's really good. The teleplay for this episode, once again, written by Mark Goffman, who wrote episode 2, and Jesse McGowan, who wrote episode 3. So we're getting to the tail end of the season. We always see this on Netflix shows, more of the writers that wrote early episodes coming together to tie up all the ends of the show as we get towards the end of the season. So great to see Goffman and McGowan back on this episode. John, do you want to give us the synopsis for this episode of Umbrella Academy?
Sure. A desperate five concocts a risky plan to intercept another version of himself. Meanwhile, the FBI tortures Vanya as Diego discovers the actual causes of the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. So much good stuff in this episode. But Chris, you were mentioning earlier on that there's some things you may have had an issue with. I feel that may be forming part of your big moment from the episode.
It really is. So I'll take my first point for once, actually. No, actually, I say that for once, but no, I've been taking first point for a while now.
The whole season.
But this one I need to. My big point for this episode, and I don't mean any disrespect to the writing staff, why does it have to be Vanya?
She is inevitable, Chris.
Yes, we discover the cause of the apocalypse in this season is once again Vanya. Vanya, as discovered by Diego when he is basically goes to the commission and he goes to the Infinite Switchboard and is helped to basically pull up what actually causes it. It's Vanya being tortured, blows up the FBI building, floats out. The president runs off, escapes. He thinks it's the Russians. The Russians, and the Americans fire some missiles in retaliation. The Russians then retaliate with some more missiles. Then the Americans fire some nukes. Then the Russians fire some nukes. Then everyone fires nukes, and it's the end of the world. That is the story as it goes, as quickly played out by that, in that newsreel. But it's all caused by Vanya.
Yeah.
I'm slightly disappointed.
Okay.
Because my opinion is that it shouldn't just be Vanya, it should be the Academy. So what I honestly thought was the truth was, it was Diego saving or attempting to save John F. Kennedy from the assassination, means that then something happened and JFK was alive, and that's what was causing the apocalypse. JFK being alive. I'm partially right in that JFK is alive. It's just not Diego who saves it. It's actually Vanya.
Yeah.
And I don't like that it's her again. I just think I get it. I just don't like it. I look, each to their own. It's a clever thing, but I can see this if and when we get season 3, this will be held over Vanya's head again. It's like, you caused the apocalypse again?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're reading too much into it, because it's JFK who causes, and okay, this kind of leaks into my point. So it's a sequence of events leading up that caused the apocalypse. Yeah. First one, Vanya, absolutely, it was her power that chunked part of the moon away that came in and blew up Earth. Here, it is definitely that she effectively causes a distraction, which means JFK lives. And it is JFK, along with the Russians, that are the cause of the apocalypse, which is not surprising in the age of Cold War, I suppose, with nuclear weapons.
But also remember, all of the interrogation that's been going on from Vanya has led them to believe that she's Russian.
Exactly.
The FBI handler who's trying to interrogate her speaks Russian, and instantly she responds back in Russian to him, not understanding why she's able to speak that. So all of that piece is a really good, I think, way of having her involved in it. Involved in the apocalypse.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is, at the moment, we don't actually know that it will be Vanya, because this is only what is on the timeline at the Infinite Switchboard operator. It hasn't actually happened yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it has happened, but it's
not in the show.
Not on the show. Yes,
and
I agree.
Well, just as a reference, Herb even says JFK died. Did he? So in Herb's timeline, JFK's alive.
Yeah.
So he doesn't understand what Diego's talking about when he's saying, did she kill JFK, or who killed JFK, basically, because JFK is still alive. So we know that's not a real timeline because JFK did die in our timeline. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of like as I kind of joked about, I like the inevitability that she is going to cause doomsday. I like that Diego's the one that finds out, because his response to it is, if I'd put a bullet in her head back before the first doomsday, which he resisted doing, if I'd killed her back when I had the opportunity to do it, this still wouldn't happen. This doomsday wouldn't happen again, So I kind of like the idea that it is her at the center of it. No matter what happens, there's going to be something that she's involved in the end of the world.
Yeah, that's where I joked and I said I kind of understand it. So if they are going, and I suppose season 3 will be the answer, because if in season 3 Vanya once again is somehow responsible, like tracking it back, that, as you said, she is always inevitably the cause of the apocalypse.
Yeah. I do like your point though, John, that it's not her as the cause. She's not exploding the world and the moon to kill the Earth. It's the humans that did it. It's the president of America that pisses off the Russians to do it. Yeah.
But actually, we don't know that yet. It's just the timeline. So I don't know whether there will be anything in episode 9 and 10, because as I say, we kind of get the answer here. It feels all wrapped up very much in a bow, but we have 2 episodes to go. So it may complicate beyond that. It could still actually be Vanya, absolutely, but in a different way. I think the interesting thing here is, we even with the Majestic 12, there's something there that Diego is connecting on to, and we see that with Grace checking out Diego's suspicions that there is even, there is a third party at play here. There is the Majestic 12 as well as the Commission, and then there's the Academy. So it's interesting. But absolutely, she is. At the moment on the Infinite Switchboard, she is a catalyst for the apocalypse because her explosion means that JFK is not assassinated. And just because I keep getting this mixed up, and number 5 was on the grassy knoll to make sure he was assassinated, or to make sure he wasn't assassinated?
We don't know right now. What we saw in the first season of that first episode was old number 5 making the jump and the gun behind him, but we didn't see the death of Kennedy, or we didn't see him shooting another shooter, or whatever it was that was supposed to happen there. We know that he jumped out on the job and left it, but we don't know what his mission was. So I presume after this episode we may find out what his actual mission was, because we have the conversation between the 2 5s in this episode.
Yeah, the only thing I'm assuming is that his mission. So at the moment, my assumption is his mission was to stop, or to maintain the assassination. But him jumping, Kennedy's still dead from season 1. So.
Yeah. Oh.
Isn't he? Because otherwise the apocalypse would have happened because JFK would have... Because I presume all these events are kind of happening... simultaneously, possibly. That's the thing. It starts to get very complicated with the fact that are the events of season 1 happening there with the events of season 2 happening at that same point? Because obviously they are, because of number 5's plan to go and connect him with himself.
Yeah.
And so... what was the intention then? And was that ultimately connected to the fact that they knew what was happening in season 2? Because you see Herb there with Diego at the switchboard.
Yeah.
This all becomes a little interesting, I suppose. I quite like it. I like it, but I'm kind of trying to keep it straight in my head
Oh, certainly.
An interesting thing as well.
And that's, I suppose that's always the challenge with time travel stuff, isn't it? Like, we know Diego left 1963, is at the Commission, and as of right that moment when he's checking the the timelines effectively. What's happened there is JFK is still alive, caused by Vanya, potentially caused by Five not killing him from the grassy knoll. Maybe that's all wrapped up together. But yeah, just that's kind of the issue is we're being told the story from maybe Diego's mind. Diego's place and time is where we're seeing the story from. Had he gone there a week beforehand or 14 days beforehand, JFK would have died and the apocalypse Doomsday would have happened in 2019. So now the timeline's evolving because this family have gone back to the 60s.
Exactly. So, I think the other thing with this is, like, if it is Vanya, I think I suppose I'm going back to Doctor Strange, with the movie. I like that for me, I suppose maybe slightly different from Chris, is I like the inevitability that Vanya is this bomb, that always happens. There's a fatality to it. Exactly. No matter what they do, Vanya, and so is the cause of, or the destruction of, the planet, and that there is this finality to it, and so effectively they're stuck in a time loop.
Yeah.
It's like the record player skipping. It keeps going back, no matter what they try to do. And have they figured that out yet? So that actually, they need to kill Vanya.
I think the issue with Vanya is that she's getting such a wealth of massive power to her, delivered immediately without any guidance from anybody. She's not in control of the powers in some ways. We've seen her been able to control it a little better this season as she got a little bit of instruction from the family. We saw that little bit more control out of her. But if she'd been treated right from the beginning by Reggie Hargreaves, if he'd actually given her instruction like he gave the rest of the family, maybe she would have been able to be in control of her powers and not be the person who caused Doomsday. But we're not seeing that because she's so powerful that if she loses control, she could blow up the planet, basically.
But, okay, I get that. But would it not also be cool that it was the actual Academy, the whole of them? So in season 3, it's Klaus's fault that the apocalypse happens because he communes with Hitler and Hitler takes over his body.
That's absolutely a possibility in season 3. If it gets confirmed, we still haven't gotten a note for whether there will be a season 3. I suppose just one thing I would say, Chris, as well, the Doomsday itself, I felt from the first episode, I thought it was actually caused by the Academy working for the American government. That's the way I took it. It's a very short scene in that first episode, but all of them are fighting on the side of the American government, and the nukes land in the US, blowing it up effectively. So nobody else fires nukes. If you fire nukes, that's the end of the world, basically. So the only people that fire nukes are the Russians hitting American soil because of the Academy fighting alongside the Americans, is what I thought was happening. So,
what you thought? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So in the first episode, that's what you thought, and that's fine. What we actually find out is that both of them fired nukes at different times, and then this is the final nuclear explosion.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, so ultimately, the Academy here is fighting a war, but it is the humans that are firing the nuclear missiles. So I think in Diego's scene at the Infinite Switchboard, it's that they fire at Alaska first, the Russians, and then there's the retaliation and just that build up of retaliation until you get, nuclear holocaust. And if you don't obviously die from the bomb, then you've got, that lovely radiation to kind of make it really awful for the next sort of year, 6 months, maybe
3 or 4 weeks. Probably.
Exactly.
You don't turn into the
depends how close you are to the blast.
Yes. Ultimately, you don't turn into the Hulk. That's a myth from comic books. Chris is.
I want to try. You can't tell me I can't be the Hulk. I'm angry enough anyway.
You can be the Hulk if you want to be the Hulk, Chris. But is that the end of your main point?
That's the end of my rant. My point.
Anything else that anybody else has on Vanya from the episode? She's quite central to it. I think particularly with the interrogation that's going on throughout the episode. John, anything?
Yeah, it's just the torture scene at the FBI building. In particular, I love the LSD sequence with the little drops to the eyeballs, where you kind of get that melting clock thing. The tray of water
turning
into eyeballs, and Vanya seemingly then connecting backwards into the academy with Reggie, with all of them there like they were as kids. But there's also this connection, this idea that Harlan now is connected and linked with Vanya. You see him mimicking her movements as she's being tortured with the electricity by the FBI agent. And so, yeah, this is a really, I kind of thought, the whole sequence of Vanya's interrogation just really kind of good. I thought it was, just the way it was done, linking with Harlan, the LSD, trippy drugs always kind of makes things interesting, like they've done with Klaus in that sense. It's, because you can just go mental with the graphics.
Exactly.
I thought actually they could have gone a bit more mental with it, because I like the idea that this whole room would be wibbly wobbly, getting a little psychedelic.
I have to say that eyeball out of the clock in the room the whole time that keeps staring at her is probably the freakiest one of all of them.
It looked like the Eye of Sauron as well, because it was kind of orange.
Just moving with her movements as well, yeah. And just the music set to that, the Butthole Surfers song Pepper, is just so perfect. And really, it's amazing thinking that they're back in the 60s and probably could have chosen a multitude of songs that have always been used for psychedelic moments. There's so many tunes towards the end of the 60s that they could have chosen, but Butthole Surfers song works so well here. Really, really good. A great scene. And again, is this the first time we've seen all of the cast wearing their Umbrella Academy uniforms as adults? Because we obviously saw the younger versions of all of them in the past wearing those uniforms, and having someone like Luther squeezing into an Umbrella Academy uniform, I thought was hilarious. But yes, having them all sitting around the table, as it's infecting her mind, as the interrogation is infecting her mind, was just really good. I really enjoyed it.
And you get that explosion as well then, that connects with Harlan just right at the end, with the blue light. Well, not explosion, it's just her power energy sort of radiating out of the interrogation room.
That radiating energy is just so interesting. It's so different to what we saw in the previous season, when she was exploding and like that. So it's as I was saying earlier, or in previous episode, it seems like they've all upgraded their powers, or their powers are growing now that they're all using them more. It's just that constant growth. The mutation of the mutation, if you will.
Maybe, yeah. I love that we're seeing what the effect of her bringing Harlan back to life is, this actual connection between the two of them, because we were speculating what it was. Had she passed on all of her powers to him? Clearly not, but she has passed on some connection between the two of them, so they're probably shared.
She shared her Firefly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like her Fireflies now too. But yeah, so moving on from Vanya then, I suppose, John, what is your big point for this episode?
It's just the induction and onboarding of Diego at the commission. I kind of felt like, no, that's the thing. I kind of felt like I was having an out of body experience, in the sense that he took his abduction and drugging by Leela just kind of so well. And also that the handler is kind of on board with her new head of security, also her daughter, getting one of their greatest nemesis to sort of work with her. And I kind of like, though, that despite all that, I really like the fact that Diego kind of does play the smarts here. When the induction with Mr. Briefcase and he finds out about the infinite switchboard, goes to look to see what was the cause of the apocalypse. And I love then that he connects in, or is helped by Herb. I love the fact that they take, this kind of nerdy, awkward, butt of all jokes kind of operative in the commission. And I love the fact that then he helps Diego out with how to use the switchboard, because Diego just causes loads of sparks, a slight electric feedback for him, and we see then it's the Vanya in the FBI building, and also you get the sense of, the welcome to the resistance, as there is this, this grouping led by Herb realizing that people are going missing under the handler's, sort of coup. Yeah. And so anything to sort of mess with her, so he helps Diego to go back, steal one of the briefcases to go back to 1963, where they beam into Ray's house, and you have, both Herb and Diego back in the early 60s. Absolutely. Here. So
I love how nonchalantly Alison introduces the third of her brothers to Ray. This is another one of my brothers, Diego. He's popped back from the future, and Herb looking at the dead body in the room of the Swede, going, "We have people to clean that up if you really need something."
Exactly.
Really good.
But do they? That's the question I have. It's like we don't hear very much after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing here as well, just connecting back to the Swedes, is that the elder Swede here has an important sort of realization, and that the instructions that were delivered down the chimney are kind of not authentic. Exactly. So he suddenly, he's able to tell that it smells like lavender, which I suspect connects him back to the sauna, with the lavender being used as the back, slapper. Yep. And then, and also the kind of the fake paint, the self-made Blue Peter constructed, make it yourself, tube that she did in the hotel room.
Yes, so this was the tube that was delivered by Leela, because she's a climber, from the handler. So the handler, being connected here. So that's definitely coming back towards the last two episodes, right?
Must be.
Has now found out he's now on a vendetta course because two of his brothers are now dead, because of the handler. So, one other thing about the handler, you said that she was really happy about her new choice of right-hand man for her new head of security with Diego. I absolutely loved her line going, "Your vagina needs glasses. You can do a lot better than this guy." So, to her daughter, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, I heard that was one of the best. Although I do love the idea, I'm just putting it out there, that season 3 is all of the Academy working for the Commission. Being, like, they are the security, they are the operatives to keep the timeline on check.
Maybe.
Like, that's it. Like, that's a cool thing, because
it would really
got
depend.
all the skill sets.
Absolutely, it would really depend, and I think that's kind of the conversation that Diego has with Leela in this episode, where he's trying to get an understanding of what the Commission do, and she kind of says they maintain the correct timeline. And that is the perception that causes the problems with the Commission, isn't it? So the correct timeline is all dependent on who's in charge to decide what the correct timeline is. So,
exactly.
So what we've seen already with the handler here is that she wants to make Jazz out of the timeline. Whatever suits her is the correct timeline, effectively.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas AJ may have been better at that, we don't know too much about him as a personality, but he may have been much more likely to keep a more coherent timeline, or a timeline that's closer to what should be actually happening. But definitely under the handler's control, maybe not. But whoever it is that's going to take it over, maybe that's a good plan for season 3, Chris.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, the handler, I suppose, as well, in accepting Diego as well, she may have some nefarious thing around that. But also, if he does step out of line or ruffles feathers, as she says, then Leela is the one that's going to have to bump him off, basically.
If he ruffles even one feather, you will kill him yourself. Yeah. I love it. Also love Mr. Briefcase, during the presentation, smoking away in the cartoon, because that's a nice little nod back to those types of cartoons from the 50s, basically. So I can't really work out where the Commission is set. Are they outside of the timeline, or are they in the far-flung future? Because it's not really talked about whether people are traveling back and forth to a future time, but they're definitely completely outside of the timeline. Because remember, according to what was happening in season 1, the timeline ended in 2019, so they must be outside of the timeline, is the way I'm thinking of it, but I just don't.
Well, the apocalypse happened.
Yes.
The world didn't fully end. Like, the world didn't explode. It's just the majority of the population
I thought it was
apocalypse.
Everybody died in 2019.
Well,
that's why they were jumping out of there.
They could be on another planet. We know that Sir Reggie is an alien, and it may not even be the apocalypse here is dealing with Earth. And only Earth, not the rest of the universe.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't forget whether they were on outside of the timeline, but yeah, another planet absolutely could be the way they're going. Could be where they're all living.
Yeah. But Derek, as we all like a fart joke, on to your next point.
Well, it's another big moment for the episode. Future 5 meeting Teen 5, as it kept describing him in the subtitles for this episode, and the 7 stages of paradox psychosis for this episode.
Yes.
I absolutely love this.
Great.
I love how twitchy Aidan Gallagher is when he started to come up with this plan, and that kind of translates itself into the itch. That's one of the 7 stages of paradox psychosis. I really like the interaction with Luther. I love that it's Luther that he chooses to go along with him to be his spotter, as he says, because Luther has this fantastic look on his face. Tom Hopper plays it so well, as if he has no idea what he's supposed to be doing. It's like, I'll get a cue in at some point as to what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
They sit down and have their conversation, waiting to talk to Future 5. Or past 5, 14 days younger than Teen 5, as we find out in this episode. But they have the conversation, and 5 tells him what will happen if they don't fix this, and then turns around to Luther and says, "Do you understand what I'm doing?" And there's a brief pause from Tom Hopper before he responds with, yes. It's as if, I guess I'm supposed to respond with yes anytime he asks me a question. Brilliant interplay between these two, and especially once you get to see 2 different actors playing exactly the same role at a table together. I think it's always fun to see what they're doing, and both actors playing the role completely the same. Both of them hunched the same way. Both of them have their eyes open very wide the same way, which I know is a tribute to the comic books. Both of them having those conversations with each other where they have the same kind of pitter patter, just so you know it is the same person that's speaking at the side. I think they did a great job casting the older version of 5 for the show.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We saw this actor in season 1, but it wasn't until now that we actually, oh my god, they nailed the casting between these two characters, or these 2 actors, because yeah, it's the back and forth. It's just mwah. It's
so good. And I just love, as always with a show where you have a list of rules that people will go through. And I love that all 7 of these stages of paradox psychosis start to come out in both of the characters as you go along. I think the first one, well, as I said, the first one was the itching. You see 5 already itching at the idea when his future self has arrived, or his past self has arrived in Dallas. You see him already scratching his neck, effectively. Yeah. That's the start. But I love Luther jumping in with when he says, "You are itching." 5 says no, and Luther goes, "Well, that's stage 1, that's denial," because Luther thinks he understands what's going on. But yes, flatulence obviously comes in very quickly as 5 sits down opposite older 5. Then older 5 takes up the flatulence and walks away to go to the bathroom. But yeah, there's a bunch of these stages that they start to go through in this episode. I'm sure we'll see more in the future.
Absolutely.
I really loved the director's choice to do that kind of Zombieland listing of the stages being written out on the screen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just in that kind of the scribbling, and I was just like, yeah, that's a fantastic choice, because you could have just done him like listing it out, but it's just that it was between that and Briefy the Briefcase. Those 2 nods to those informational style kind of videos. Yeah, just brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I loved how it started with the listing, but even as well, just where he's, you see inside the fridge, he's hydrating, and then all of a sudden he's dousing himself in talcum powder down his trousers or down his shorts, under his arms, all to kind of put off the symptoms of these 7 stages, which was just really nicely done. And again, just the plotting against each other of the number 5s, Teen 5 and ye oldie kind of number 5. The counter offer coming in from the older number 5 to Luther, effectively, why don't we just take him out? We know what it is now when we go back, so we just jump back to, and that's the thing. This is where all these kind of time streams and even the events of season 1 are just kind of there going, okay, grand.
Yeah.
It's just, this is really, really good. I love how, this plotting, between the two number 5s with Luther kind of in the middle.
Absolutely. And how easy it is to convince Luther as well. It's like, okay, we just jump forward into 2019. We go and make friends with Vanya and it's fine. The doomsday will be averted. We'll be grand. And Luther's like, yeah, actually, that sounds like a great plan. Because again, Luther hasn't had a very good time in the 60s at all. He's been separated from his family. He's had a really crap life, thrown out of his apartment, lost his job. All that stuff happened to him. So he has nothing really to live in 1963 for. So probably a good person to go to, but also not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, is old Luther. Although I do love him. Should we at least make reference to the fact that they're sitting in an Irish bar? The most...
And drinking Guinness.
Yes, yeah. They certainly are.
That is... since we're all Irish and since we're sitting in Dublin recording this, it's a nice little thing to have lots of Americans in Irish bar. I will say that is my nightmare version of an Irish bar, having trad music playing for the 45 minutes or so that the characters are in the bar, just on loop over and over again, having traditional music being piped in, Irish traditional music. But it is nice that they did use it, because there are bars like that, but they're mostly tourist bars.
Also, did you see the state of the Guinness that was poured?
I did.
Yeah, that's why when he said Guinness, I was very suspicious.
I think there's a point. And
it was like, so for any of our listeners who don't know what Guinness, it should be majority black with a thick white head. Not think of a beer being poured out too fast and you've got too much foam at the top. You almost want it like that because it will reduce over time.
I think everybody's seen a Guinness, Chris.
Yes. Okay. Well, then they should know what the white heads on these Guinnesses were like minuscule.
Yeah. It looked more like a beer, like an ale, because it had a red tinge to it as well. So I was thinking like it was Kilkenny. Yeah, exactly. No
doubt. There is a point when they arrive first that Five has had his Guinness just poured for him at the bar, and that looks fine. But it's when they're at the table and he mentions, "Here I am drinking a Guinness. What did I expect to happen?" And it looks like some flat Coke in a pint glass, basically. And that's most likely what it was. It seems to be a very difficult thing to approximate in movies. So any films that are made outside of Ireland don't really use Guinness. Inside of Ireland, they just keep filling up the actors with Guinness. So I don't know whether people are very good at actually approximating what it looks like when it's not actually Guinness in the glass. So.
It also explains why most of our actors are always drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of our shows, if you want to see an Irish soap opera, it's essentially just a load of drunk people.
Fighting.
Yeah. Fighting.
Yeah.
How many pot of gold?
No, Chris. That's not good. We never say pot of gold. That's left to the leprechauns, not to real Irish people.
Hey. Just because they're some short doesn't mean they're not real Irish people.
Well, true. If there were leprechauns, they would all have passports. You're right, Chris. Apologies.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of it for the discussion between those two characters. My main point for the episode. I think it's so good seeing them together, and I love having them work together. I want to see how they play off each other in the next episode.
Yeah, right there with you.
Anything else we haven't talked about in this episode? I think Vanya's interrogation really took up most of the episode, and then the interplay between the Fives took up a lot of the rest of it, and then Diego in the future. So not a huge amount that we haven't really talked about for the episode, but any notes you want to mention?
It was just the LSD, or acid, I suppose, colloquially. But it just the fact that we used to live in the city that it was discovered.
That's right.
In Basel, in Switzerland. And they have the guy who invented it, one of the chemical companies, was tripping. He had something like 1,000 times the dose that you should have. And when he cycled home, he was tripping. And it ended up with him calling his landlady a witch or something. And they have a annual bike ride in commemoration of his cycle from his lab to his home in Basel to celebrate the discovery of LSD.
Yeah. It was his lab assistant that had to cycle him home, wasn't it? So he was tripping balls, as they'd say, looking at the sky melting in front of him after taking way too much LSD. But it's a fascinating thing. Probably one of the most fascinating things about Basel. That they invented LSD.
Probably. And you probably need LSD. Yeah.
To survive.
Maybe. Well, we're back. We're back anyway.
You did.
A couple of quick notes from me. Really loved that moment between Ben and Klaus. They have the conversation about what was it like for Ben to be inside Klaus. Klaus describing it as it's like being one of the lesser Baldwins. They're in there, but doesn't really accomplish anything for you, which I think is very funny. And Ben saying it's like having no skin but wanting to touch everything. I love that because Klaus's response to that, it means it hit him on the right level. Basically, totally understands that. Very funny. And one scene that I really wanted to pause and take in every single moment. You mentioned earlier on, John, when Grace goes in and sees the lab of Sir Reginald Hargreaves. Chris, you may not have gotten this. I caught at least one reference to the comic book that's in there. The plans for the televator are on the wall in that room. The televator is I'd mentioned it before, the elevator that transports the Umbrella Academy around the world to their various locations. So Sir Reginald Hargreaves is working on some of the great inventions that he has for the future. But in that back room where Grace is going through all the documents, you see some plans for the televator in there. I think it's cool.
How did you catch that? I was going to slow pause do it, but I was like, yeah, I didn't have time.
I was trying to catch a piece of dialogue that she said. I paused it and rewound, and I happened to catch just that little moment there. So I want to go through scene by scene in there to see how many other references are to the inventions of Sir Reginald Hargreaves. I have to do that next time.
I'd say there's also, I think I did see the Eiffel Tower. So that was my only piece.
Oh, yes, of course.
I saw a photo of the Eiffel Tower. So at one point, I don't know if, should we say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So in the comic books, the Eiffel Tower is a spaceship. And so I caught that reference.
It's the first mission. Yeah.
It's the first mission that they do in the comic books. So I think it's definitely something. I think these are all just nice subtle nods from the crew. The one thing actually I like one that we never caught, I don't think, in season 1, when Vanya is looking at her book. And the back of it there's a quote from Jared Way.
Yes, I saw that the other day.
Where he's like, "This is amazing." I.e., one of the creators, one of the creators of the Umbrella Academy is doing the book quote.
So he exists.
And I only saw that because it was released on Twitter recently, and I was like, "How did I miss that?"
So Jared Way exists in the Umbrella Academy universe. I like that.
It's like Stan Lee exists in the Marvel universe.
Exactly. That was it for my notes for the episode. Anybody else have anything else they want to mention at all?
No, that's it from my side.
Yeah, cool. That's it from me.
Excellent. Chris, overall, what do you think of the episode?
Okay, so I enjoy the story they're telling. For me, it's fantastic to see how they're getting towards and how they're starting to wrap up everything. As I started with, my only critique, if you want to call it that, is why does it have to be Vanya as the catalyst or the cause? Again, I like the idea that in my head, each of the members of the Academy can be the cause. I thought that's where they were going. I thought Diego was going to be the cause, or, I actually did just think it was going to be Diego saving JFK, where actually it's Vanya exploding, saving JFK that causes the apocalypse. So that was just more where I was going with it. But it's they're telling us the story once again. And I always say this, even just because I don't agree or how I would have done it slightly differently, I'm like, fine, well, no, this is your story. Tell me your story. So for me, I'm enjoying the journey. I just wish the one of the stops on the way was slightly different. I wish we had have gone to, we had have stopped off in, Hollywood versus stopping off in lower LA kind of way, on the way to San Francisco, if you want to call it that. So yeah, that's it. I still loved it. I still really enjoy it. And like the actors are doing fantastic jobs, with especially 5. So John, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I really liked this episode a lot. I think, for me, it was, I gave it 4.5, vestigial nipples out of 5. I think, I kind of, again, I liked, this build up again. It feels like it's going from one episode to another, just this building up to this release of power by, Vanya. I thought her interrogation scene was, really, really good. And, it's a little tricky seeing the FBI doing interrogations, a little precursor to Guantanamo maybe, but I really liked how this kind of built up. I like the Hail Mary plan from number 5 and the two of them plotting against each other. I think, as we said, the teen number 5, ye olde number 5, just working really well with Luther, the spotter, the wingman stuck in the middle, was really good. I like Diego and his induction. I'm surprised he took to it like a duck to water, but nonetheless, I like that he does kind of see this potential future from the infinite switchboard and goes back then to try and prevent it, tell the others to try and stop it. So I think we'll see how that goes probably in the next episode. But I like that Herb is involved in this resistance against the Handler. So yeah, it's just so good. And of course, the cheeky little fart that came out in the Irish bar, I think when old number 5 goes to the toilet, and just these little stages of the paradox, psychosis sort of coming in here, the sweating on, the number 5, the kind of agitation, the denial, all this, just really, really nicely done.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Definitely, really loving, this season, consistently excellent. Derek, what did you think of episode 8?
Really liked episode 8. In fact, the only thing that really surprises me about this episode is how we can't convince Chris that he's wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Totally
it's just
wrong.
a differing opinion.
Vanya is absolutely intended to be the catalyst for the apocalypse, every season of this show so far. But it may change if we get a 3rd season. You're absolutely right about that. I just felt like she was a time bomb waiting to go off from the beginning of this season because she arrived with no powers and no memory. And I like that we're at this point where there have been so many things that could have set her off from the beginning. And we get to this final episode and we find out what sets her off is, well, some LSD and interrogation. It's pretty massive amounts that are needed to push her over the edge, by this time. But I love how it was handled. I love how the episode was directed and how the scenes were put together, especially seeing all the family together, those weird versions of the family inside Vanya's mind who all stick up for each other and not her, except for Ben. I loved Ben's, even in her mind, he's being protective of her, whereas everybody else is pushing her, to release this piece of information. It's Ben the whole time telling everybody to back off. So there is still, a really close connection between those two again. We've seen how close Ben must have been with all the rest of the family. But we've never seen his backstory as to why he died. We've never seen what his relationship was with the family when he was alive back in the early days. We saw one scene of him as the horror, in a bank job, but we're getting this insight between the meeting of Ben and Diego last episode while he was in Klaus's body. We're getting the insight that he was loved by the rest of the family. So I like that little touch in there. But yeah, loads of great stuff in this episode. Another one of my favorites for the season. I think, episode 7 just pushes it out, as my favorite, but episode 8, again, really good and loving, 5 versus 5, or 5 by 5, whichever way you want to say it.
Yeah.
Really good.
But gentlemen, then, I think with that, it's time to head over to the Ye Old Academy's pub, pop,
There you
quiz.
go.
Yes, we are in the Irish pub there in Dallas today, drinking a dodgy non-Irish Guinness that doesn't quite taste the same as if you're located directly on St. James's Gate.
It's just 'cause the water doesn't come from the Liffey.
Well, as you move from that epicenter, it gets worse, worse, until you get to Beamish in Cork, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, or Murphy's is the other one, isn't it?
Yes.
In Cork.
Yeah.
Gosh.
We have a lot of different types of
We
steak
do,
in Ireland,
we
if you're
do.
wondering.
Yeah. Murphy's and Beamish are terrible, but that's because I'm a Dubliner. So, yeah. Anyway.
But
go, John.
nonetheless, we're in the Irish bar, and the question for episode 8, the 7 stages, is where in the Commission Handbook can you find the 7 stages of paradox psychosis? And indeed, what are they? A lot of work for this one, fellow brolly dollies, but it will pay off. And of course, you can send your answer in to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or over on the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Yes, as mentioned before, we're putting the questions in the spoiler post. So if you want to answer it in the spoiler post there as well for this particular episode. 2 points available for this, John. I think there's a little bit of work in writing out the 7 stages of the paradox, but they're written on the screen for you. The other one might take a little bit longer to come up with the answer for. So
yes,
so 2 points, right?
2 points, a 2-pointer, a double header for this 5x5 episode. Yes. The question again, where in the Commission Handbook can you find the 7 stages of paradox psychosis?
Yeah.
And what are they?
And because all 7 are written on the screen, you have to get them all right. Okay.
Perfect. You have to get them perfect.
Thanks so much for once again joining us for this episode of the Umbrella Academy discussion. We will be back next time with episode 9, 743.
Is it a bit better plane? No, that's a 747. Bye.
Thanks, fellow brolly dollies. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, keep tripping. Bye.
Bye.